All right, we're back, and right now we have the Weeks family with us. Thank you guys for being here, and thank you guys for being willing to share and open something that's so personal and intimate. You know, I mean, like, you're letting the world into your family, and I just want to let you know we really appreciate that. So I want to start with Mama Weeks. You can just go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Linda Weeks. I'm Jimmy's mom. Well, James Weeks Jr.'s mom. I have to make it right.
You got to say it the right way.
But this has really been an ordeal.
Right.
I've served every day in prison that Jimmy did.
Oh, well, that's an amazing way to say that. That's a really, because that's the truth. That's your heart is your child, and
that's it.
Yeah.
You know, you go to visit your child because they're not home with you, and you have to sit in a room, and you've got all these men walking around with guns on that are watching every move you make. And when first time I went to see him, I had talked on the phone to him with a 3-inch piece of glass between us. And then we moved from there to Wallens Ridge. I had to drive 8 hours to get to see him for 1 hour. Then I would drive an additional hour to my brother's house, spend the night, drive that hour back the next morning to get to see him for 1 hour. And then I'd drive 8 hours to come home. And you cry and you pray and you do all these wonderful things, you know. But when he was at Big Stone Gap, where I had to drive the 8 hours, I could buy him a drink, I could buy him some chips. But I had to sit him on this 2-inch ledge, and I couldn't touch his hand. Here's your son sitting 2 feet across from you, and you can't touch him. And that, it tears you up. And I've had so many people, friends as well as relatives, tell me, why don't you forget him? He messed up. You know, he did something wrong.
They really said that?
Yes. They really have.
What went through your mind when someone that said they cared about you told you to forget your child?
Well, my cousin told me one time, he said, why don't you just forget him? You know, he's locked away. Go on with your life. And I said, well, let me ask you something, because he is an ordained minister. I said, did God forget you when you were out here drinking and partying and doing things you shouldn't have been doing?
Wow.
I said, no, he didn't. I said, I've made mistakes. God forgave me. I have to forgive my son. God's going to deal with him, and God's going to bring him through this and bring me through this.
When you first found out, let's start with the situation with the Christian school, because that obviously had a huge impact on him. When he came up with this idea that his education was not as valuable as money to the school, is that how you felt as well?
Yes, because I knew other people, other parents that had children in there that was behind on their payments. And I told them, I said, you know, the doctor has taken me out of work for a minimum of 3 weeks because I almost cut my little toe off. I said, if you give me the 3 weeks, I can get the job finished. I can bring you every penny of the money. And they said they couldn't work with me.
Wow.
So my daughter, who is younger, I could get her records, or the school Hampton system could get her records, but because of Jimmy's age, they wouldn't get Jimmy's. And so therefore, he couldn't go back to the Hampton schools.
Did you watch him kind of just fall off? What was that like?
It hurt because I couldn't pick him up, brush him off. I couldn't make the pain go away no matter what I said. And I kept telling him, Jimmy, you know, God loves you, and he's gonna make things better. And he just looked at me, Mom, you just don't know.
Because at that time, Jim, you already got this revelation that money was more important, and is that correct?
Yeah.
So she's trying to comfort you. You're not buying it because you already know, at 16, the kids already kind of see what's going on. So you couldn't tell him something maybe he would have believed at 9.
Right.
And so you're kind of feeling helpless at this point.
Yes, absolutely. And I had a lot of Christian friends, ministers, as well as, just basic people in the church. I had asked them for help, and all of them had said, this is not something we can help you with. And I said, that's okay. You know what? God is going to bring him through this, and it's going to make him a better man than any of you that I'm talking to now.
Wow.
And God has.
Yeah.
He really has.
Because, I don't think that people really understand the amount of hurt that we can accumulate.
No.
And the place that hurt really takes us.
Right.
And for you to even start off the way you started off, saying that I served as many days, I mean, that is such an expression of how much a mother's love really is connected to their child. Now, when you found out what happened, where were you?
When I was in my van, or my truck at that time, and a police officer called me and told me my son had been arrested, and his truck was being towed to this particular junkyard, and I could have it after they had finished searching the truck for any paraphernalia, whether it be guns, weapons, or drugs. And I said, Jimmy might drink, but he doesn't do drugs.
So you knew he had a drinking problem at this time? Yeah. Okay.
Because I told him, Jimmy, you don't need this. Oh, Mom, you just don't understand. I've got it. I've got it.
I've been there.
And I said, but Jimmy, you haven't got it. But that's okay. God's going to take you through this. He's brought you through so much. I've been told a number of times that he was going to die and he wouldn't be sitting here today. And I told the doctor that told me that he was going to be dead by the time he was 18, I said, no, God's got bigger plans for him.
Wow.
And after I told him that, him and his family turned around and started going back to church. Because he said he had never seen that kind of faith and trust in somebody that you don't see him.
Right.
He doesn't sit here and talk like we're talking.
Right. And what I think is interesting is that the people that were saying he wasn't going to do anything with his life, he wasn't going to, it wasn't like they weren't seeing evidence of that. They were seeing somebody who was falling apart. Am I right? They were seeing somebody who had a drinking problem, who was falling apart, who wasn't going in the right direction.
What she's referring to is growing up, I had a lot of medical issues. At 2, I laid in a coma for a week. They didn't expect me to come out of it. When I was 5, I was diagnosed with a kidney disease called pulmonary alkalosis, and they didn't expect me to live past the age of 18. I had a kidney stone removed at the age of 5, and also at the age of 9, and I died on the operating table both times.
Okay, so with the whole Christian school thing, you're already thinking, all right, God does not care about me. Does that sound about right?
No, he had brought me through a lot, and I grew up in church, so I had a lot of faith in God. But when everything happened at the Christian school the way it did, it was just like a turning point for me. It just flipped a switch, and I was like, if that's what being a Christian is all about, I don't want a part of it.
Wow, and now that had to hurt even more, knowing what God had already brought him through, and then to lose faith like that. Is that okay? You did lose faith?
Yeah.
You lost faith.
Yeah.
And so you lost faith, and you just kept believing, no matter what was happening with him. You just kept believing that God was going to bring him through.
Absolutely.
So, your faith was stubborn. I love it, because that's kind of cool. No matter what you saw, you just kept believing. Wow. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it's so easy for us to get caught up in the situation and to let the situation dictate our faith.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you were just saying, I don't care. Basically, you're saying, I don't care what the situation looks like. I know that God can fix this. I love it. She's stubborn. That's stubborn faith. That's stubborn faith. And that's what I think. That's what we need right now, because it's so easy. It is easy to throw in the towel.
It is. I mean, when I saw them take him out of the courtroom the day that they actually put him in handcuffs in the courtroom and took him out,
They sentenced me.
I walked outside and I walked in the little hallway, and there's this big glass mirror there. And I looked out and I said, God, what have you done? Have you turned your back on him? And you know the picture in the Bible where God's standing there and he's got his arms out like this? I could see him as good as I can see that exit sign up there, and as good as I can see you saying, I have not lost him. I've got him.
Wow.
And it was like a peace, just somebody wrapped you up in a blanket, you got all warm and mellow inside, and I knew Jimmy was going to be okay. But at first, when they told me they were putting him in prison, Jimmy had always been a picky eater, and, he had so many medical issues, and he couldn't read and write he could read and write, but he couldn't really understand what he'd read. And an old Baptist minister went up to News City Jail. They asked Jimmy if there was anything he wanted to do, and he said he wanted to be able to understand and comprehend. So he gave him a New Testament, some paper, and a pencil, and told him certain verses he wanted him to read them and write down what they meant to him and how he understood it. And he said, then we'll discuss it. So Jimmy got so he could read and understand what he had read. Something I tried to do in the city of Hampton couldn't do.
But the Word of God. So that was one of the first things you actually understood was the Word of God? Is that what you're saying right now? Like when you read?
Comprehending.
Yeah. I'm saying one of the first things you've comprehended was the Word of God.
There was,
I'm sorry.
Tender Journey.
Right.
By James, I think it's P. Gillen. Anyway, Chaplain Burns gave that to me and told me to read it. And there's a series. It's like 2 or 3 different books, but it's all one thing. And I called my mom and I told her, look, hey, you need to get this book and read it. I mean, you really like the storyline for it. And I was sharing with her what the storyline was.
And you were like, what's happening right now?
So it was like, it was evidence at that moment, that I was beginning to comprehend what I was reading.
Yeah.
Which reading comprehension was something that I had struggled with all my life. And that's mainly because of the medical issues and all that I had as a kid.
Now, I want to talk to Papa Weeks here. Papa Weeks, how you doing?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah, good. Now, this obviously had to have been a very difficult thing because every father wants to see their son succeed, and no parent as a whole wants to see. What was your take on everything that happened?
Well, she called and told me what his sentence and all was. And first thing I said, I want to do a single parent. But in 1979, I had a heart attack. 4 bypass, I died twice.
2010. You had
2010,
Yeah.
and then I said, well, I'm back, so I know I'll see him come out.
So you were totally worried about not seeing
Yeah.
him again. Yeah, and I can understand that because that's especially the amount of time that he had. It's easy to think that something can happen inside. Is that what is the fear?
Yeah.
The not knowing.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that you were afraid of. The not knowing. Did you guys question yourselves as parents at all?
No, I didn't.
You didn't?
No.
What about you? Did you question yourself? Did you? Because sometimes parents will take on, this had to have been my fault.
First, I just kind of denied it. people to work, asked where Jimmy was. I said he was going out of state to work and all that stuff. And finally I had to realize, and I told him what was going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just couldn't hold it back no more.
Yeah. When Jim called and asked for, go ahead.
That right there just kind of brings forth what I said about earlier about family and so-called friends. When you're in there, they don't want to be associated with you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like you're the worst of the worst because you're in that place.
Yeah. And what's crazy about that is that some people who make those decisions to distance themselves are doing things themselves. They just haven't got caught. You know what I mean? A lot of people who are committing crimes just haven't got caught. So I mean, that's sad in itself. But I do know that as believers, we're commanded to look after the prisoners and things like that. So it's not a suggestion. We're commanded to look after those who are behind bars and to show the love of God to people who are incarcerated. So that's a scary thing that people can so easily call themselves Christians and so easily not do the will of God. That's very scary that's where we are. When Jim called and asked for forgiveness, what went through you guys' minds?
I told him, I said, Jimmy, you were forgiven the day you were born by me. And I said, I don't care what you've done. I don't care how bad the system says you are. You're not. You're my son, and I love you, and I'll always be here for you.
Wow.
That's just me.
Yeah. No, and I get it. I get it. Yeah, you're a mom. You're a mom. And, and I tell people all the time, and sometimes they don't get it, but I hope everyone can get it right now that, a mother's love is so much, a parent's love is so much like the love of God. But, I won't say that if you don't have kids, you won't understand it, but I can say that if you have kids, you really understand it. You
Absolutely.
really understand that there's this, because my kids, they've been through so much already at such a young age. They've already been through so much that all I do is think about, like, what can I do to protect them? And so I know, I can only imagine how terrifying it is to not be able to protect your kid. And no matter, even as adults, we still need mama and daddy, you know what I mean? And so for them to be behind bars and not know what's going on, not protect them, were there ever times where you went to see them and there was a lockdown and then did that happen? Mm-hmm. So there was times where you would drive 8 hours to see him and there was a lockdown?
Yeah.
And you couldn't see him?
Sometimes he would call, if he knew we were coming, he said, well, there's a lockdown coming. Don't come this weekend.
Normally we don't know when lockdowns occur, but inmate.com, if you work in the mess hall, all of a sudden you see they're stocking up on styrofoam trays, they're stocking, the things they need to deliver food to the buildings. Mm-hmm. When you see that influx come in, then that's a sign that lockdown's coming. And so every so often you can kind of get a heads up and let your family know, but a lot of times you don't know.
Wow.
There was one situation when I was at Wallen's Ridge where my cellmate that had been put in a cell with me actually took a bar of soap and carved out a design, and it was melting chess pieces down, making a shank. And he told me he had to kill me because of what guys in the pod had said about me because of my charge. And I looked at him and I said, well, if that's going to make you a bigger man, then go for it. Because that just means my God wants me to be with him tonight. And I sat there on that bunk, wide awake, could not sleep because I didn't know what this guy was going to do. And I look back now and I think how stupid it was to say that. But it's a testimony to the power of God, because God kept me that night. The guy fell asleep. The next morning they brought breakfast by. He pushed his stuff out on the pod tier. They commanded him to put his stuff back in the cell, and he refused. And so they carried him to the hole, or shoe, whatever you want to call it. And they wanted to know what the problem was. And he just told them I was crazy. He couldn't be in the cell with me. But he was a Muslim. You know, I had a CO come by and shake my door and tell me that when I come out, because I was in the cell by myself at that moment, when I came out for Podrec, I was going to assault him. If I didn't, they were coming up in there on me. Well, there was some fights at other spots on the compound that day, and so we didn't get a chance to come out for rec because they were taking care of other situations. But that night we come out, and I called my mom and I told her, I said, don't come up this weekend because I might be in the hole. And she wanted to know why, and I told her.
So there were these really dark moments that happened. Now, was this before the letters or after?
Yeah.
This was before the letters.
This was before the letters started.
Before the letters started. So there were still like these really dark moments that were trying to come into your life, and you guys had to kind of walk him through that as well. Now, what were you thinking? You know, as far as did you get to talk to him a lot, or no?
Yeah, I talked to him on the phone, but I just couldn't accept it. I had to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I said he's my son. I'm proud of him. He went wrong. I still love him. I had to be there for him.
Yeah.
Like she said, some days go up there, you couldn't shake his hand, nothing. When you go up there, you go through a scanning, they take everything out of your pocket on, they scan you, send this through this thing that scans you. You go see them, when you come back, they give you all your stuff back, and you go out the door. You just almost, the only thing they're doing is really strip search you.
Let me ask you this, because it seems like you guys went through that, but how did you keep your faith when you went through that as a dad? How did you keep your faith when he was going through all this?
I just had to, you know, he just said, I gotta go through this. Let's see him.
Yeah, he said, I like that answer. I just had to. You know,
She went one time to see him at Rollins Ridge up close to Tennessee, and it was on a holiday weekend. There was one guard there, and he said, "Well, I guess I gotta leave." I always know, so I ain't got nothing to do but stay all day long. Said I'll stay as long as you want to see him.
oh, they let you stay.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Now, when he let you know about these wonderful people that were writing him letters, what were you surprised? What went through your mind?
I was thrilled
Wow.
because I could write a letter or send him a card, and he didn't, he was excited to get the mail, okay? I talked to him every time he got a chance to call, because you can't call them. But I was excited to know that somebody out there, God had sent them into his life to help give him some added strength in his faith and in his walk with God. And after he started getting the letters from Miss Jane, and he started telling me some of the things, she'd write him and tell him. He said, "Mom, it's like I'm a part of her family." I said, "That's what God does. He puts us where we need to be when we need to be there, Jimmy."
So you knew God was working immediately.
Yeah. As soon as he called me and told me, I knew. Nobody knows how many days I've prayed that God would put somebody there to give him that added inspiration, that added word of encouragement. If it wasn't no more than, hey, you're good. You are a good person. God has got something in store for you.
And I think that a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that they are what they did, and they can't release themselves. They can't free themselves from what they did, and I think that's a big mind game that we play on ourselves, and I think the enemy just kind of takes advantage of that, on people, because we will define ourselves by what we did wrong,
Right.
and then it's like a walking through mud, to get out of that, and God has to really take us out to, and really push hard to get us out of that mindset, because it's so unhealthy. And sometimes it does take that extra encouragement for somebody to come in. Mm-hmm. And what's so amazing is that it's a perfect stranger. That's the most amazing part, that a perfect stranger comes into the situation with this love.
Right.
And did you, I mean, did you feel, when you were praying, did you ever think it was going to be somebody like from the outside writing a letter, or did you think it was going to be someone on the inside that was godly? Or
I didn't know for sure. I just knew that somebody was going to come into Jimmy's life.
Wow.
Somebody was going to be there. I could
That's
stand
awesome.
and tell him, I can sit and tell him, Jimmy, I love you, and God's with you, and He's going to bring you through this, and you're a good person, and all these other wonderful things. And to him, it's like, well, you're my mom. You have
You're
to
going to say that. That's true. Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's the mindset of most kids. But when somebody, a total stranger, can say something like that to you,
Yeah.
that doesn't know you, has never met you, because she had wrote him all these years and sent him cards and letters, and he had wrote back to her. And she didn't get to meet him until last summer, after he had gotten out in
Yeah.
January.
Yeah.
You know, that she could actually put a real face to the person behind
And so
the
it's like
letters
you
and
guys
cards.
met through love first, and then actually met.
Yeah.
Which is, that's powerful all by itself. That, you know, as the preachers like to say, that'll preach. But that's powerful. That it's like you guys met each other
Through a piece of paper.
Yeah, you know what I mean, and
Yeah.
and you had a full-on connection of genuine love and care before that. Now, did you get a chance to talk to them before, or no? So you guys hadn't even got a chance to meet them?
No, not until last summer. Well, I talked to him after he had gotten out in January. I did get to talk to Miss Jean a couple of times on the phone when he would call and talk to her.
Wow.
But I didn't get to meet her until Jimmy got to meet her last summer, and that was a blessing. I mean,
Yeah.
that was one of the best blessings.
Because this
that
is
have ever
somebody who
happened,
partnered
you know.
with you on taking and helping you
Right.
guys get through this difficult ordeal.
Right.
That is like tremendous. That is huge. If y'all are wondering what that noise is, the church is across the street beside a fire department, so it's across the street from a fire department. So everybody's probably gonna be like, "What is that noise?"
Yeah.
You know, they're looking for me. No, but the reality is that you guys. You said it was this ordeal, and it's interesting how love kind of overwhelms our trouble. And you guys are like witnessing that. Now, for you, when he called to ask for forgiveness, what did you think about that when he called and asked?
I was glad he did it, and all. I was seeing what the road he was going down. But you can talk, you know what I mean? The young renew and everything, and they think they're gonna do like they want to do what they want
Yeah,
to.
I know it's tough.
And then finally they realized this problem,
Yeah.
and it was too late.
Now, you talked about you guys' relationship and that it wasn't as strong as it could have been before, but coming out, you guys' relationship are closer to each other. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah.
You feel like you're closer now? Yeah. You know, it amazing how sometimes certain situations just, you know, even though it may be a bad situation, God knows how to correct it and fix everything.
Right.
Isn't that amazing?
Yep.
You know, that's amazing. Listen, we're going to take a break, and we're actually going to have the people who were writing, the pen pals who are writing Jim, they're here, and they're going to be sitting here, and we're going to be able to talk to them, and that's going to be Miss Jean and Joe Caddio. We'll be right back.